Welcome to one of the most exciting parts of NLP, and that is working with corpora. Let's begin by understanding what is a corpus in NLP. In NLP, a corpus simply means a large collection of text, and that collection can be anything, just about anything that you can represent as a text. You can call that as a corpus, like books, news articles, or tweets stored in a structured format so that we can analyze language patterns, train models, or build NLP applications. So, this corpus or corpora, so corpora is just a plural of corpus. It is used for training models, testing algorithms, exploring word usages and grammar, comparing writing styles across domains, as we will see in the project section when we are going to compare two different authors' writing style. So there are different types of corpora out there. We can have a general purpose corpora like news or literature, or domain specific, for example, medical records. And we can also have annotated corpora. And in annotated or corpora, the idea is that each token or each sentences are annotated in some way. For example, their parts of a speech or their syntax tree, these can be annotated. Now, in this lecture, or maybe in this section, I should say, we will be exploring NLTK corpora. So, the amount of text or the kind of text that is available with the NLTK package, and some of the corpuses that we will be exploring are given here, such as Brown, Gutenberg, Reuters, and movie reviews, and we'll be seeing those as we go along. So right now in this lecture, I just wanted to introduce the concept of what is corpus and why it might be a useful thing for NLP. Okay, so one question for you: why might using a domain specific corpus like medical documents lead to better results for healthcare NLP application than using general news text? So this is a prompt that I'm giving you, and try to think about this question, and then we can move to the next lecture. Okay, so let's start with the Gutenberg corpus. So, Gutenberg corpus is a collection of public domain literatures like Shakespeare, Austen, and more. Okay, so what exactly is Gutenberg text? Gutenberg corpus has public domain literatures like Shakespeare, and we can use Gutenberg corpus to compute various things like visualize their frequency distributions, and we can basically use NLTK to access some of the text from Gutenberg, okay, as we will see later. So let's try it out. Let's load our Jupyter notebook and let's try it out, and try to see what we can do and how we can load the various amount of text that is available in the Gutenberg. Okay, let me open my Jupyter notebook, and I'll resume the video once I have the notebook ready. Okay, so now I have my notebook ready, and what I want to do is I want to create a new notebook for this lecture, and I'll name this lecture as Exploring Gutenberg Corpus. Okay, now since these corpuses are huge files, they don't usually readily come with your NLTK package. Although you might have installed NLTK, they might not be available. So what we need to do is we need to download them. Okay, so what I'll do is I will import NLTK and I'll download the Gutenberg package. And once I hit run, it should download the Gutenberg. Okay, so it's downloading the package and it's unzipping the corpora, and true means it has successfully downloaded it. Now that we have the Gutenberg package, what we can do is we can import it. And how can we import it? NLTK offers a very generic way to import all the different kind of corpuses, and that is with a sub package called corpus. And within that corpus, we have all the names to load the various package. Okay, so now that we have imported the Gutenberg module, what we can do is we can import the files. See, Gutenberg is like a big collection of books. Okay, and mm, and if I have to give you the exact number, there are about 25,000 books which are available in the public domain in Gutenberg. But within the NLTK, we have only some subset. I guess around 10-15 books are available within the NLTK, because making available all the 25,000 books would be re- really cumbersome and really huge on size. So that's why they made us available only some books that we can work with. Now, the first task is to be able to see which books are available in Gutenberg, and that we can do with something known as file IDs. Okay, so there is this function called file IDs. So I'll see Gutenberg dot file IDs, and if I run it, it basically prints all the names of the file that are available as part of this download. Okay, and if I have to compute the length of this, let me do that. So we see that there are 18 books available, and notice all these books are available as a text file. And in NLTK terminology, this is known as plain text format. Okay, you don't need to worry about this as of now, but what you need to worry about is how do we get the data from these files. Okay, see, there are four ways of getting the data. We can either get their raw text and save it, we can get words, we can get sentences, and we can get paragraphs. Okay, so these four levels of data we can get, and let me show you how we can get all of these one by one. And this is pretty straightforward. Okay, so I'll say raw text. Suppose I want to load uh Austin Emma dot text. Okay, so what I'll do is raw text Austin Emma, and what we need to do is we need to write Gutenberg dot raw and provide the name of the file that we want to read. Okay, so in our case, we want to read Austin Emma dot text. And if I hit run, you see we have the raw text available. And if I print it, it should be able to print the entire raw text of this entire book. Okay, obviously this is a huge text. That is why we have this scrollable section where we can load this book infinitely, not infinitely, up to the point where it ends. Okay, now let's see how do we load the words. So if I copy just this, and instead of row, I'll say words, and instead of raw here, I'll just replace it with words. And if I hit run, and if I now, this time since it is words, it will be a list. So that's why we can compute its length. So you can see it has about 192k words. Now let's see sentences. Let's load sentences, and again, as you might have noticed, sentences is just the same. So I'll say sentences words dot sense. Okay, again, para should also be same. And if I hit run, all of these should be loaded. And now let's check the sense. So how many sentences are there? So it has about around 8k sentences. And how many para? It has about 2.3k paragraphs. I hope it makes sense, right? So this was about loading the entire book from Gutenberg, and this same procedure can be basically repeated for any text. that is available on in the Gutenberg, and not only in Gutenberg but also Brown. So the earlier in the lecture I mentioned about Brown. Brown can be loaded again in a similar manner. We can print Brown's file ID, but before that we need to first of all download Brown and then load the file IDs, and then one by one we can load any file whatsoever. Okay, before closing out this lecture, I would like to talk about frequency distribution. Okay, how do we analyze this piece of text? And one way is to do a frequency analysis. Like if we have to analyze the author's vocabulary style, we can do this sort of analysis where we are trying to understand the kind of vocabulary that the author uses. So for that, we can use the frequency distribution. So how do we make the frequency distribution? For this, we can basically write nltk.text and import frequency distribution. Now to create a frequency distribution class, we need to pass a list of words, okay, from the text. We already have the list of words, but right now if we try to create a frequency distribution, the distribution would not be very, you can say, uh, very predictive or very insightful, because that will only have stop words. Let me show you what I mean by that. So I'll create a frequency distribution of, or maybe let me define it like this, frequency distribution Austin Emma, and I'll pass the words of Austin Emma to this frequency distribution. Okay, so we have the frequency distribution ready, and if I print it right now, we see this data, right? Now there is a function of this class, and that is most common, and inside this most common I can pass a number. So for example, I want to see 5 most common words that Austen uses in her work, and we can see she uses comma, dot, to, the, and end, and we can clearly see that this is not very suggestive, and we need to take care of this, right? So what we can do is, first of all, we can remove these stop words before passing this into words. Okay. So what I can do is I'll import NLTK, and we learned about this in our text processing class. We will import stop words, and we will write English stop words like this. And let's also wrap this up in a set so that we have unique. Okay, now we have English stop words. And what I can do is I can filter out Austen words. So for word in Austen, if word dot lower not in English stop words, then I'll save this in word dot lower. Okay. So now we have this, we will get this word Austen filtered, and I can pass this instead in a frequency distribution. Let's see how the results changes after doing this. And let's now frequency distribution dot most common. I think we okay. So we did not remove these punctuation. To be able to do that, what I can do is I can add a and clause, and I can write. So in Python, each string has this method called isAlpha. Let me tell you how that works. So if I write maybe some string Rahul, and I call a method isAlpha, it will give us true. Okay, but if I call it with dot, it's returning false. So the idea is to filter out these punctuations which are not alphanumeric. So let me rerun this again, and if I rerun this, now you see the most common words changes. So the most common words that that Emma uses, Austin Emma uses are MR, Emma, Code, Board, and MRS. So MR stands for Mr. and Mrs. Okay. Now again, depending upon the use case, you can remove even could or would. They might not be telling you much information, and that totally depends on the kind of use case that we are dealing with. Okay. If this makes sense, then I think yeah. So I think that would be it for this particular lecture. Now let's move on to a more structured and labeled corpus, and that is Reuter's corpus. Thank you so much for watching this lecture. Okay, so let's start with analyzing the Reuter's corpus. So Reuter's corpus, as the name itself suggests, contains real world newswire articles categorized by topics. Okay, like maybe the topics could be crude oil, money related, etc., etc. Okay, so each file in Reuters corpus can belong to multiple categories. We can analyze the number of articles in multiple categories and things like that. Okay, so I think one of the best ways to talk about Reuters and analyze it, would be by going to the notebook and creating a new notebook, right? So let's do that, and I'll rename this notebook as usual as analyzing Reuters. Okay, so once we have this ready, let's import the from corpus package Reuters submodule. Okay, once we have that, I think we would need to download it, but let's try it out first of all. So I'll say Reuters dot categories. Okay, so you see this error, and this error is because we did not download the Reuters package. So let me grab this code, or just write it down. So I'll say import nltk.download. Okay, so we have this package. We should be having this package ready soon. And once we get that, what we can do is we can do all sorts of things. Let's see how many categories we have. Okay, you see this? We have articles belonging to these categories like coffee, coconut, barley, groundnut, meal, etc., etc., right? Okay, so similar to the Gutenberg corpus, this also has a file ID column, file ID field. Let's print it out. And within the file ID, we have got all of these files, or rather, I should say, all of these folders. So what we can do is we can do something like, let me show you what I'm trying to say. So I can do Reuters dot file IDs, and within the file ID, I can provide one of the keywords. So for example, I want to provide the keyword crude. So let's see what we get. So it will give you all the files which are related to, which are basically related to crude oil. Okay, crude oil related articles. Because see, when I printed file IDs, it returned just all the articles. It started with 14826, but now it started with 14829. It is only returning those articles which corresponds to crude oil. Internally, NLTK has mapped these categories to the articles. Okay, so now how do I load a given article? Suppose I want to load this particular article, and most of the tools you already have, because in our last discussion we did that only. Okay, you see this? it has loaded this entire article. And this is related to what? This is related to crude oil. And how do we know that? We know that because we copied it from here once we printed Reuters.fields by crude oil. Okay, so what we can do with this data is we can build some sort of classification model here. And when I say classification model, what we can do is we can potentially create a data set. But let's count one second before giving you that suggestion. Let me count how many articles I have, how many documents I have. So I've got around 10,000 documents. Now what I need to do is let me do one thing. For category in Reuters dot categories, and let's print category and length of Reuters dot file IDs category. Okay. Okay, let's see. One second. Okay, so now overall we have 10,000 articles, and we have all sorts of article distribution. So what we could do is maybe because some categories have very low amount of articles, what we can do is we can forget about those. We can only consider those articles which are very high in number. So for example, earning, or what about crude. And we can build some sort of classification model. So given a piece of information, given a piece of text, we can predict whether it belongs to a crude category or not, crude oil category or not. Okay, so this would be a very interesting project, and we can probably explore that later in the in this entire course. But for now, I think that would be it. And Reuters is a very powerful data, even powerful than I feel um, the Gutenberg, because with this data we can also build some sort of sentiment model, not just classification model. We can look at what type of sentiment is being expressed via this article by the author, whether it is positive, negative, or neutral. Okay. Yeah, so now uh, after we have explored this, now let's explore the brown corpus, the legendary corpus, which is brown corpus. Okay, thank you so much. Have a nice day. Okay, so the brown corpus is famous for being one of the earliest structured corpora organized by genre. So within this corpus, we have something known as genre. So essentially, we have various books, and all those books are and articles are categorized by genres like fiction, news, romance, etc. Okay, and again, this particular corpus also offers a method called categories, just like Reuters. And categories gives us idea about you know the kind of files that we have. Okay, so now what we can do with it, we can compare genres by computing words. We can basically calculate the average sentence length or average words used, vocabulary used in various various genres like news, romance, fiction, etc. These sort of analysis can be done with this sort of corpus. So let's try to do something related to that. So what I'll do is I'll create a new notebook to analyze the brown corpus and show you how we can utilize this. Okay, so now that we have a brown corpus file ready, so let's first of all download it. Import NLTK, nltk.download, and let's download brown. And after downloading it, obviously we will have to import it from corpus. And after this, as we did with routers, we will print categories, and we see that we have got some 10 12 categories. So let's see how many file IDs we have. Oh, okay, so these are lots of file IDs. Let's do a similar thing as we did with routers and see, maybe run a loop. So for in category in brown dot categories, and let's print out the category and the length of brown dot file IDs category, brown dot file IDs category. Okay, so we see that we have, in adventure we have 29 files, in editorial we have 27. So let's try to print maybe some words, some raw articles. Okay, so how can I do that? So I'll say brown dot. Also, one more thing that I need to tell you is that when I try to load brown dot words, as I did in Gutenberg by calling, we can provide the file ID like CG26. Let me do that. 1 second. Okay, so what it did is it loaded this article. Okay, but we are not limited to this. We can maybe give the entire category itself. So what it will do is, so let me show you what I mean by that. So in the categories, I can pass religion. So we can see that I think something is not looking good. 1 second. Categories, inside categories, let's pass news. Why it's returning so few words? Okay, 1 second. 1 second. So what, brown dot words or maybe brown dot raw if I do? Oh, okay, so words was not returning correctly. So let's return it in raw format. So what it did, so what I was trying to say is, when we pass categories instead of file names, so let me do maybe again let me try to load CG74. Okay, so you see, CG74 would be not that big of article, so it's just this. Okay, but if instead of CG74, if I pass a category, what will happen is, so for example I pass romance, what will happen is it will concatenate all the romance articles, all the 29 romance articles. So what I can do is I can do genre analysis. Okay, so I can say romance words, and I'll copy this, and I can say news words, and I can do genre analysis and try to build a predictive model around that. Okay, so what we can do is we can create a function. Let me create a function called average word length in both the type of articles. So I'll say words, and in this what we can do is we can basically sum out the length of words for word in words. So whatever words list we pass in this function, we sum the lengths and we divide it by length of words, and it will give us the average word length. So let's try to print the average word length for romance words. So the average word length for romance words is 1, and news words is again 1, because something is not right. Why it is not right? Because we loaded a raw, remember our words function was not working. So that's why what I can do is I can import a word tokenize before doing that. Okay, word tokenize. Okay, now instead of calling these words, I'll call them raw. Okay, now what we can do is romance words, word tokenize, romance raw. Similarly, news words, and I can call this news raw. Okay, once we have that, what I can do is I can pass. Okay, so we see that in the romance, the average word length is 5.39, and in the news, the average word length is 6.3. Okay, this could be useful in comparing, and not only that, we can do all sorts of interesting things with it. So, yeah, I think one exercise that I would like to give you here is try calculating the average sentence length. So currently what I have done is I have only tokenized it by word. And if you recall from our section 2 lectures where we talked about sentence tokenization as well, you can tokenize it at sentence level and you can calculate sentence length. And we will be doing that in our final project where we will be doing author style analysis. Okay. Great. Now let's learn how to analyze word frequency visually. Thank you so much. So, frequency distribution. What are frequency distribution? Clearly, the name itself suggests that frequency distributions count the frequency of the words that are there in our corpus. And we have already touched upon this topic in our earlier lectures where we did the most common words from our Gutenberg database. Okay, so the idea is that we can use frequency dist class, and it shows us word appearances frequency. And then once we have that class ready, what we can do is we can do plotting. So let me demo it really quickly. And to demo it, what I'll do is I'll open our earlier notebook where we explored the Gutenberg corpus. And within this notebook, I'll rerun the earlier cells that we already ran. So let me rerun it. Okay. So let's rerun it really quickly. Let's calculate length and let's calculate the frequency distribution. So our frequency distribution gives us the most common words. Now, after we have this, let's try to plot the 20 keywords. Okay, you see this? It has given you the frequency plot of the keywords that are most used by Emma Austen. Okay, so the idea is that again frequency distribution, we already touched upon this, how it is created. It is created by passing the list of words, and the kind of list of words you pass, that will determine the kind of results you will get. If I did not treat the stop words, we would have gotten lot of punctuation here. But right now it's doing a fine job. And depending upon the use case and depending upon the problem that we are solving, we can even remove these Mr. and Mrs. or could and would or must. Okay. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about in this video. So I think one exercise that you can probably try is plot the frequency distribution of words in Shakespeare's Hamlet from the Gutenberg corpus. We already did that entire thing for Austen Emma, and you need to replicate this for Hamlet and see if you can find something interesting. Okay, and by the way, you will be finding all these notebooks resources within the resource section of this video. Okay, yeah, thank you so much. And let's now learn how to search within Corpora for meaningful word patterns. Okay, so in this lecture we will be talking about these tools, or rather these techniques which we can use to analyze our corpora better, or analyze some of the context specific things like concordance, collocations, and dispersion. Okay, so let's talk about these one by one. What do we mean by concordance, collocations, and dispersion plots? These are pretty easy. They sound really scary, but they are pretty easy. And we will be making sure that you understand these in a very, easy manner. So let's talk about concordance first. Concordance means in context. What it essentially allow you to do is, given a word, if you want to see how that word is being used within your entire corpus, if you use concordance, you will be able to see that. Let me make the copy of my Gutenberg corpus notebook, and let me show you. One second. Save notebook as. Can we create a copy? I think we can create it right here. Duplicate. And let me open the copy version and let's rename it concordance and relationships. Okay, so let's do these preliminary steps really quickly. Okay, so now we have this database loaded. What I can do is I can calculate uh, collocations, but to be able to do collocations and concordance, we would need to first of all create a text object. Okay, so in NLTK you need to create a text object to be able to understand the concordance, collocation, and dispersion of a text. So how can I create a text object? So what I can do is I can import from the text sub package a class called text, and once I have a text, I can create Austin Emma text, and we already have cleaned words of Austin Emma. I'll copy this and I'll create a text object by passing this. So now I have this text object. What I can do is I can pass, so this text object has a function called concordance. And in this concordance, I can pass a word. So let's pass a word from this frequency distribution only. Let's pass Emma. Okay. And if I hit run, what it will do is, first of all, it's not showing us all the matches. So it has matched Emma at 865 times, and it is only showing us 25 matches. And why it can be useful? It can be useful to understand how Emma is being used in context. So you see this in the first time Emma appears in this text is here in the beginning, where Emma is the first word. Emma Jane Austen, volume, chapter, etc. And then Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, rich, comfort. And then Emma playfully had. So you see this, it helps us understand the context, the words around Emma that were used to be able to uh, understand the usage of Emma better. Now let's talk about dispersion plot. Okay, so this is very interesting. Okay, to be able to understand dispersion plot, you need to understand the entire book as a horizontal line. Okay, entire book as a horizontal line. So consider this horizontal line. Suppose my entire book has got 10 words. Okay, hypothetically speaking, and each word takes a place. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And let me get rid of this. And suppose I I mark each appearances of Emma as one, as a horizontal, as a vertical line. So suppose Emma appears first, so I'll mark a horizontal line. Suppose Emma does not appear at the second position, does not appear, does not appear, does not appear, does not appear. Suppose Emma appears here as well. You see this? Suppose Emma appears 3 times in our 10 words book. In that case, this is how our dispersion plot look like. Now you might be wondering, what could be the use of it? What could be the use of a dispersion plot? Dispersion plot would help us understand where the character is mentioned in the book, whether it is mentioned in the beginning, in between, or in the end, or it is mentioned throughout the book. Suppose my dispersion plot looks something like this. So in that case, we see that the dispersion plot for the word that we are trying to compute is being used throughout. Okay, and also it can be used to compare two different authors, as we will see in the project. Suppose I calculate the dispersion plot for a word in Shakespeare's work and in Austen's work, Austen Emma's work. Then what I can do is I can look at their dispersion plot, and I can look at the style in which they are using the same word, and it can help us understand and give us insights about the way they write. Okay, so enough of talking, let's calculate in dispersion plot. Again, to be able to calculate dispersion plot, we need to have this text object ready. So I have this text object ready, so I can give this dispersion plot a list of words. So let me calculate, let me not calculate, but just give Emma. Now you see this word offset is essentially means this entire Emma Austen work is around 70,000 words long. And you see this, it is densely populated. Emma is used throughout. Now let's use something maybe less common, maybe companion, or we could have passed it here as well. Okay, so companion is not used that frequently, right? So you get the idea, right? I think that would be it for this lecture. So we talked about concordance, we talked about the dispersion plot. I think I missed one more thing, and that is collocation. And collocation is really simple. It basically gives you commonly occurring words. So let me take this text object and print out collocations, and let's see what do we get. Now what it is giving you is, it is giving you pair of two words. So Mrs. Weston, right? Frank Churchill. So the use of collocation will help you understand the characters of your story, or of the corpus. So my Emma Austen is having these character: Mrs. Weston, Frank Churchill, Miss Woodhouse. So you see this. So collocation is also a really powerful tool. It will help you. Now combine collocation with dispersion. So suppose I I want to understand when different characters appear. So let me print the collocations of various characters. Maybe God, Dad. Okay, and it will help us understand who are main characters. So you see this. There are some. So for example, Campbell is not introduced in the beginning, but in around 1/4 of the story when it ended. And Martin was very active in between. He was not active here. In beginning he was active, in between not active, in and he got active, right? So it helps us understand. So collocation coupled with dispersion plot, you can understand a lot of things about the author and about the story that you are trying to analyze. Okay, now time to load your own text files and analyze them like a pro. Okay, so building your own text corpus reader. This is very important. So far, what we have doing is, we have been trying to understand how we can take the internal corpuses, internal text files that are provided by NLTK, and load them effectively. But now we are going to be seeing how we can use text corpus reader and create our own class. Okay, so not class but corpus. Okay, so let me do that, and let me create a new notebook, and I'll rename it creating custom corpus. Okay, so to be able to create a custom corpus, let me do one thing. Let me create a new folder here. Okay, and I'll name this folder as my corpus, and within this folder I'll create two text files. So let me create first dot text, or maybe let's do one thing. Okay, so I'll go to Wikipedia and I'll search maybe United States president. Okay, and maybe president. Okay, okay, so now let me open the article for Donald Trump. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll I'll rename this. Let's rename this Donald Trump and copy the text that I had. I'll just get rid of this. Now let me create a new file. Maybe name it as Barack Obama, and let's Obama. Okay, so let's copy this here. Okay, so let's copy. Okay, so now suppose that my corpus only has these two articles. Okay, assume that I don't have any other articles, just two articles. The idea is to explain you how you can bring your own corpuses within NLTK. So I'll do NLTK dot corpus import. So there is a function called plain, I guess it's plain text corpus reader. Okay, so once I have this function imported, so I'll define a root folder. And my root folder was what? My root folder was my corpus. Okay, so I'll define it like this. And then I'll create my corpus, plain text corpus, root folder. And after that, I need to tell my corpus the type of files that it is allowed to read. So I will give it a pattern where I'm telling the corpus to read all the text files. Okay, or maybe I think I don't need this. Okay, so now I have this corpus ready. So now let's try to uh, print file IDs. Okay, so you see this, it has printed Barack Obama.txt, Donald Trump.txt, but also it has printed these checkpoint notebooks. They are not required, but let's leave it right here, because for to adjust this we can obviously adjust our regular expression here, the pattern here, but we are not concerned with that right now. What I can do is I can take my corpus and I can take my words and I can pass it in my Barack Obama.txt file, and you see this, it has imported this, right? Now I can even do raw, and when I do raw, it just imports, it just loads the entire file, just like that. That means now we are in position to do all sorts of things that we have learned so far to do with Gutenberg, Reuters, or Brown. Okay, so we can do all sorts of such things. Okay, so yeah, now you can tokenize, clean, analyze your own data sets. I think at this point, one of the projects that you can try is create a mini corpus with, let's say, 100 text files, maybe articles, essays, or blog posts, and maybe tokenize them. Try to plot top 10 frequent words and search for collocations or build concordance. And we have learned all these in our previous lectures. Okay, so I think this is our last lecture in this entire section 3, and this entire section 3 taught you about how to load different corpuses which are already provided to you in NLTK package, and also to create your own custom corpuses which you can work with and do all sorts of cool analysis with it. Hello everyone, welcome to this mini project in the section 3 where we are going to do a project on author style analyzer depending upon based on whatever we have learned so far. So let's get started. Let me create a new notebook for this and let's rename it really quickly. So I'll call this author style analyzer. Now before we begin this project, I think we need to jot down and limit down what are we trying to do with author style analyzer. So let's jot down the steps. So the first step would be to decide which two author we want to work with. Okay, whether we want to work with the data set or corpus provided by Gutenberg, or we want to pull in our own corpus files. Once we have that, we want to understand and try to come up with a list of metrics we want to print to be able to understand the style of author. This can be top 20 frequent words, okay, average sentence length, variations in vocabulary, okay, top collocations and concordance, okay, and I think that would be it. So with this particular project we can come up with these lists for two authors of our choice. And if you are following along with this project, I think the best thing that you can do is uh, create your own corpus with two different texts that you might be having, or two different texts that you like and you want to understand and compare their author styles. And yeah, so this is what is expected from this project, and let's start doing this. So first, to decide the author for my use case, I will be going with Gutenberg only. So what I'll do is I'll import NLTK, and mind you, we have already downloaded all the necessary corpuses in our previous lectures. So if you are stuck, or if you face any issues or errors while executing these cells, then I think you might need to download the corpuses. Okay, so I'll import maybe corpus import Gutenberg, and let me do one thing. Let me print file IDs, and within this file ID I have Austen Persuasion and Shakespeare's Hamlet. Let's compare these two. Okay, so I'll say text1 is equal to Austen Persuasion and text2 is equal to Shakespeare Hamlet. Okay, so what are we supposed to do first? So let's first of all get the raw text. So for that we will get the raw of Austen and raw of Shakespeare text 2. Okay, so let's try to print the characters that we have in both, and it will help us understand which work is larger. Okay, we can clearly see Austen's work is quite huge when compared to Shakespeare. Once we have a raw text ready, what we can do is we can get words, we can get tokens from NLTK dot tokenize word tokenize. So I'll say Austen words word tokenize Austen raw, and let's copy it and get the get the Shakespeare's words. And Shakespeare. And at this point, if I print the length of both, obviously it is quite obvious that it would be greater for Austen, but just for the sake of it, let's do it. Okay, so we see that Austen is using collectively close to 100k words, while Shakespeare is using collectively 36k words. Now I'm saying collectively because they might be using different vocabulary sets. Now let us calculate the kind of words that they are using. So for that, what I can do is I can simply call the sets function, and it will do the to the unique, although at this point it is not accurate because we have not cleaned these words, we have not normalized it. But let's do it at this point just to see. And Shakespeare. So you see this, even though Austen was using more than 100% of the total words, so the work was quite longer, but still the amount of unique words are not exactly same, but they are about same. Okay, so the unique words that Austen is using is 6.2k and it's 5.5k. Let's clean the words a bit. Let's remove stop words. Okay, so I'll create stop words list, and to do that, first of all we need to import stop words. And let's do stop words dot words. Okay, so now what we can do is we can define Austen words filter is equal to for word in Austen words if word dot is alpha. And remember, is alpha is for getting rid of all the symbols and all, and w not in stop words. So if it is the case, I want to keep it in w, and let's do the same for Shakespeare, and let's get rid of Shakespeare words. Okay, now word for w in Austen words. One second. Okay, why it is happening? So if w not in, I think should we get, I'm not sure why for I in, for w in Austen words print type of w, all must be string, right? But why it is coming out to be uh, is alpha? String object has is alpha attribute, right? Is alpha numeric, true, right? Is alpha is a function is, oh, okay, I think I misspelled it, right? Is alpha. Okay, now it should be done. Now let's try to compute the words. First of all, let's see if it reduce the words a bit. Yeah, so now after filtering it, it got reduced to 50%. Okay, again the same holds true for this as well. And what about the unique words? Okay, unique word doesn't change that much, and it makes sense. Okay, so yes, so this is so far looking good. Now let's do the average sentence length. So to do that, we need to get Austin sentences, and for that, let's import from nltk dot tokenize, import sentence tokenize Austin raw, and let's do the same with Shakespeare. Shakespeare sentence. Not sent, but raw. Okay, so how many sentences Austen has? Obviously, this would be way more than Shakespeare because it's larger work. But what we are concerned ourselves with is average sentence length. So to be able to do that, what I can do is I can calculate mean. But let's calculate the list of sentence lengths. So sentence Austen sentence lengths. So what I'll do is for S in Austen sent word tokenize S, and I'll wrap this up with length. Okay, and let's copy this and get the same for Shakespeare, and I think I duplicated it. So now if I print this, so we get this sentence length. What we can do is we can compute sum of Austen's sentence length divided by length of Austen's sentence length, and the same can be done for Shakespeare. So we can clearly see that the length of sentences is much lesser for Shakespeare when compared to Austen. And this holds true across all the works of Shakespeare. Because when I was practicing for this project, I did this with Shakespeare's Caesar, and the same was coming for Shakespeare. So if you take all the works of Shakespeare, you will see that the average length of Shakespeare's length is same, consistent across all his work, and it is about 15.4. And this tells us about the author itself. Okay, I think, yeah, that would be it. Vocabulary sizes we computed. We did not compute the collocation, so let's do that. So for that, I'll need to create a Austen text object. As you might be recalling from earlier discussions. So now Austen words filter, and let's do the same for Shakespeare text object. Shakespeare words filter. Now what we can do is we can compute top collocations for Austen work, and we can do top collocations for, and top collocations gives us the character information. Okay, now let's do one thing. Let's compute dispersion of top collocations. So what I'll do is I'll I'll get top two collocations, Wentworth and Russell. I'll try to see how Austen is using these characters. You see, Wentworth is almost entirely dispersed, But now let's try to see the Shakespeare's dispersion. Maybe Ham versus Guildenstern. Okay, we see that Ham is being used similar to the way Wentworth is used by Austen, whereas Guildenstern is used very less frequently. Okay, so this makes sense, right? Okay, so I think at this point I would stop myself, but I think I like this stuff and I can go on for as long as I want. This is pretty interesting, right? So you can get to know so many different things about the author by just looking at their text, right? I think what uh, what I would want from you is to do these things on your own text, on the text that you find interesting, you find curious, you are curious about that. Okay, so yeah, that's it. I'll see you in the next section, which is section 4. And till then, bye bye. Thank you.